What is the difference between a whistleblower and somebody guilty of an inappropriate data breach? I think the answer to that question depends on whose data it is and whether or not you've got anything to hide. Joining me on the program now from Pillar, Protecting Individual Life, Liberty and Rights, Nathan Seiuli. Kia ora, how are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me.
This question of data breach, which, I mean, these are the bad guys, right? These are the people that need to be locked up. You know, they're guilty of the data breach. They've released some secret information. You know, they've impinged on people's privacy. And a whistleblower who says, hey, actually, something isn't right here. I'm going to bring this into the light. In the case of Barry Young, it's the same person. Some people would call him, oh, he's guilty of data breach. Other people would say he's a whistleblower and a bit of a hero. Unpack the story for us, Nathan. What is the story of Barry Young?
Yeah, so I imagine many of the listeners will be familiar with the name, but maybe not all the details. He was an IT expert worker within Te Whatu Ora, and came across some data that he read and interpreted as showing there was a greater correlation between certain vaccine batch numbers and death than what the public narrative was or what was being shared with the public. He then took that upon himself to share that data on an overseas website, InfoWars.
Yep.
And once Te Whatu Ora realized, they launched an investigation, traced it back to him, and what ensued was obviously some prosecution and legal elements there. It's still open before the courts. He's out on bail. And what they're trying to decide really is he a whistleblower or is this a data breach? Now, many people have different opinions on that. I
Yep.
understand there's a lot of emotion tied up in this topic specifically around COVID, but we have to look at it objectively and we have to look at it by what the law says. For me, I personally don't feel like he meets the threshold of being a genuine whistleblower. And I think in that case, if you're prepared to leak that sort of information, you also have to be prepared to take on the consequences of
Yep.
doing that.
Some of the details on this one, because honestly, it gets personal if he's going, but yeah, that was my medical information that is now suddenly all over the internet. However, steps were taken to say, hey, we're going to make this data available, but not the personal details. We're going to clean it up a little bit so that it's not traceable to individuals. There were some protections of privacy that were involved here. Does that in itself make a difference in your view?
I mean, when you say it like that in isolation, theoretically, sure. If you went to great distances to anonymize the data, there might be a different conversation there. That's what Barry claimed he did. He claimed he anonymized the data. However, following investigations proved and showed that the data was at great I suppose, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, you would have to try hard to unanonymize it, but you
Yeah.
could unanonymize it.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a tongue twister there. But with the data that was available, you could figure out who was who if you went to great expense.
Yeah, and hey, part of the issue there is that there weren't that many people who lost their lives during that period of time compared to perhaps other parts of the world. And look, I'm not going to get into a COVID good, COVID bad a thing here, or vaccine good, vaccine bad. That we don't have time between now and next Christmas for that conversation. However, having said that, this is an emotive topic. This is something particularly powerful, and the problem is, in my view at least, if Te Whatu Ora says, oh, no, nothing to see here, we don't want this information available for people to ask questions about, that just throws petrol on the conspiracy theory fire. Nothing to see here is, I mean, for people who are saying government cover-up, this is music to their ears in some ways.
Absolutely, and it plays on the real issue that underpins this and many recent issues, which is trust in our public service, trust in our institutions, from government through to universities, through to healthcare. We just have this huge dip in trust that's come out over the last few years. Now, some people might call that a negative thing. I think it's not the most positive, but I think it is important we hold our public services and government-funded services to account through transparency and accountability. But we do have to continue to be measured, rational, logical as we do that. So while I don't agree with mob mentality, light up the torches and get the pitchforks and chase down every single person who's on the taxpayer dollar, I do think that we should be able, as a public, to ask for transparency, accountability, but there are pathways for that. We cannot expect the system to work if we continually are trying to tear it apart, regardless of how good our intentions are. We have to remember, we live in a pretty great democracy. New Zealand is a pretty great country. The systems do work if we utilize them properly. I don't think we are utilizing them properly, and I've said that on here before. But yeah, I totally agree with you, Andrew. But the bigger issue here is trust in our public institutions is at an all-time low. We need to fix this.
And honestly, this is a particularly difficult one because regardless of how transparent Te Whatu Ora would be, somebody would find links that aren't there because there's a huge difference between somebody with correlation here. Somebody dies with COVID, did they die of COVID? Somebody died after they were vaccinated, did they die because they were vaccinated? And some of those things we're not going to be able to prove. And some of the people who have some strong opinions on either side of this, you and I aren't going to change their minds in this regard.
Exactly.
But actually, this is the sort of thing where we need to be able to have robust conversations about this. Now, I'm sure Barry had an employment contract, and he is pretty clearly in breach of that. He did betray the trust of his employer. He did cause them to be seen in a bad light and all those sorts of things. There is definitely some wrong that was done there from his employer's point of view. But can we have grown-up conversations about this one, or is this still, 5 years on, is it still too difficult in your opinion, Nathan?
I think it is difficult because there has been a lack of transparency. We haven't had the inquiry released publicly. I know they're sitting on that. I don't know why that hasn't come out. That's, in my view, the biggest contributor to why there's so low trust, especially on this topic. In regards to the employment agreement, sure, when you enter the employ of a company or an organization, you sign up to participate by the rules that they outline in that contract. Now, that's not to say that you sign away all your rights. No. Let me be really, really clear. As an individual, you still possess all your rights, but you can't work at McDonald's if you're going to tell everyone who walks in the door that the hamburgers suck and you shouldn't be eating meat. You don't align with the values of that company, right?
Exactly.
So as a free person, you should have freedom to work somewhere that you align with their values, with their mission, with their vision. I always say this to people who take up big issues with their employer when there's no legal grounds or any material basis for being upset. I say, well, you're choosing to work there and they're remunerating you financially to be there. Now, in the case of a whistleblower, in a genuine whistleblower case, there would be a legal threshold that they could meet. And in that case, a breach of contract would be acceptable on the basis that they're a genuine whistleblower. The way that Barry went about this, the one thing that we can't prove is that whether it was done in good faith or not, but he didn't raise the concerns internally. He didn't disclose what was only necessary. He released a huge swath of data with over 12,000 people's credentials being compromised, and he didn't follow a recognized whistleblower pathway. So it's hard to make the case that he's a genuine whistleblower. But I would say this, that there are cases where whistleblowers have been important in our society and shifting the dial for public information and making sure that people are held to account. So we can't take this and now write off all whistleblowers. No. We need to take it on a case-by-case basis with real nuance.
No, and I think this is important to get this distinction. And hey, whilst I might not agree with Barry's decisions and the conclusions that he came to, I also recognize that here's an individual who feels that they're confronted with literal life and death information. And perhaps that's an understanding of that threshold. If he thought this information is about people who are losing their lives unnecessarily because of something that is being hidden from them in the medical choices that they're making, I understand in that particular scenario there's a lot of pressure on an individual that feels like they cannot stay silent in that regard, but hey, you can't just go publishing people's data on the internet, and particularly certain unreputable sites in the United States. You know, there has to be some checks and balances on both sides in this regard. But hey, I know for some people, Barry's a hero. For other people, he's a villain. But
I can totally understand. I can understand the people who see him as a hero and see his actions as heroic, and I'll empathize with him. The way he perceived it, the way in which he viewed it, he felt a real pressure and a real mandate to get this information out there. This all stems from a lack of transparency, though. If we look at COVID, it was unprecedented times, and we're not here to relitigate every decision that was made. But it didn't happen in a vacuum. You know, I would struggle to say that his intentions were malicious, but it's also hard to justify what he did by the legal threshold of what a whistleblower is.
And hey, maybe Barry should have worked at McDonald's if he could stomach it. Honestly, I'm not sure I could, but this isn't a statement about if Ronald's lawyers are listening, this isn't a statement about the quality of your burgers or your health and safety practices in any way regard. Nathan, very much appreciate the work that you do, not necessarily blowing whistles, but certainly shining a light on some very important issues. We encourage people to find out more. Pillar, protecting individual life, liberty and rights. If people wanted to find out more about your organization and connect with some of these important stories, what's the best way of doing that, Nathan?
Yeah, find us on social media. We're everywhere. Our handle is pillar_NZ. Or if you want to head to our website, you can see all of our media releases and news. That's nzpillar.com. And we'd love to talk to you.
Very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.